Hey everyone, in this lesson we are going to learn about security rules. All right, so if you go to your Firebase console, so let me just open that up here, and you come to your database, you will notice an exclamation point next to your rules tab. So clicking on it, we see a big red warning banner with some disturbing news. Your security rules are defined as public, so anyone can steal, modify, or delete data in your database. Well, that's not good. So let's fix this by writing some security rules. So what are security rules? Security rules provide access control and data validation in a simple yet expressive format. In other words, our app is constantly reading and writing to our databases, right? And right now, our rules have no security, meaning anyone that has our app ID and the path to our collections, both of which can be found if you get your hands on the source code, can read and write to our database. So what we need to do is make sure that only the people we want to have access to read and write to specific collections and documents are able to do so. In our rules, we specify which collection or document we want the rules to apply to by using what are called match statements. So let's take a look at our existing unsafe rules here, okay? We have these first two lines, service cloud.firestore, and then match databases database/documents. These first two lines are boilerplate code that point to our root database, okay? So this right here, this points to kind of just our root database here. After that, we have this line, match/document equal ***, okay? So what's that mean? The curly braces denotes a wildcard, okay? Meaning this rule is going to apply to any document in the matched collection, which in this case is the root database. The equal ** makes this wildcard a recursive wildcard, which means that the rule is going to apply to any document in the collection and any children, i.e. subcollections and their documents. And then we have the actual conditions, allow, read, and write. And since it has no condition, it's basically saying anyone can read or write. So obviously this is not safe, this is bad. So what we want to do is lock down our collections and documents so that only the people who are authorized are able to access our data. Now we have three root collections, right? We have categories, products, and users. So let's talk about the level of access we want for each of these collections. For our products and categories, we want anyone who is authorized to be able to read the data, right? So that's anyone that is logged into the app, either registered or anonymous. But we only want the owner or the person using the admin app to be able to write to the database. And rights include creation, modification, or deletion of documents. So let's go ahead and translate that into security rules, okay? So let's go ahead and delete these three lines here. This is the generic match statement. And what we are going to do is we are going to write our own match statements to get us into the categories and the products collections, okay? So here's how we do that. We say match, and then we do a /, and then we give the name of the collection that we want to match for, and that is categories. Then we do another / and we are going to do a wildcard here. So I'm going to say curly brace, and we give it the name of category. And then we do a opening and closing curly brace. So what we're doing here is we are saying we want the rule, the security rule that we're about to write, to apply to any category document in the categories collection. And the rule that we want is that anyone who is authenticated can read, and the way to do that is we say allow read : if, and then the condition. And the condition here is request.auth does not equal null. Okay, so basically we're saying at the categories collection for any category document, we we are going to allow anyone to read if their request.auth does not equal null, or in plain English, if they are authenticated. All right, so we have this class here, request. We're going to be working with two main classes that are available to us, and this is the request and the resource, okay? The request is what is coming from the client app, and the resource is what already exists on the database. And you can check out the properties of these two classes in the documentation. So I'm going to show you where to find that. I'm just going to do a quick Google. I'm going to say Firestore security rule request class reference. And hopefully that'll get me to where I want to be. Let's see here. I think this is the one right here. Yep, this is what I want. So this is at firebase.google.com/docs/reference. And then if you scroll down here to security and then Cloud Firestore rules, and we are looking at request and resource here, okay? So this request class, this is what we have right here, this request. This is the incoming request context. And these are the properties that we have access to us. We have the auth property, which has a UID and a token. And the token includes these fields, the email, email verified, phone number, name, and some other things. So if you wanted to do additional verification or security rules based on those things. So for instance, if you wanted to make sure that your users had already verified their email, then you could do specific security rules based on that. If you wanted to do rules based on the type of method that was incoming, you could get access to that here. You can check out the path, the query, the resource. So this is everything that is coming from the client app, okay? So real quick, let's talk about this right here. So I said that we have two main classes, request and resource, and that the request is what is coming from the client app. Now, the request also has a resource property, and this is the new resource value present on write requests only, okay? So say we're working in the admin app and we are going to update a product. And say we're gonna update the product name. In the request class, that would be request.resource.data.name, and that would be the new name. But in resource, so let's check out the resource class now. This is the Firestore document being read or written. So its resource.data.name would be the old name. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And the resource, it has data, which is the map of the document data. So in our database, that would be all of this stuff right here. That would be the resource.data. And you can access it just like this, resource.data, and then the name of the field, and that will give you the value. All right, so that is the request and resource classes. Highly recommend you bookmark this reference documentation. All right, so again, going back to request, one of the things that you'll most commonly be doing is just to check whether it is authenticated, which you can say, just like we did here in our rules. Oh, looks like those went away for me. I forgot to save it, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that back real quick. So we said match categories / wildcard category, and then allow read if request.auth does not equal null. Okay. All right, very good. So I'm going to just click publish to save that. And then what we want to do is say we only allow the admin users to write to this category. So there's a couple ways to do that, but I'm going to do it by looking for a specific user ID. So I'm going to go over to our authentication tab here, and I'm just going to go ahead and grab the user that I want to be able to use the admin app and write to our collections. So I'm going to say this guy here, johnny@johnny.com, and I'm going to copy the UID, And then I'm going to come back to the database. And I'm going to go to our rules. And here I'm going to say allow write if request.auth.uid is equal to that specific UID. Now, only johnny@johnny.com is allowed to write to this collection. Now, for this to work, you will need to add in a login to the admin app. I don't believe we currently have that in there. Or if you wanted, you could hard code the login of a user. All right, so to recap these two rules right here, we are saying match the categories collection, and with any category, we are going to allow people to read if they are authenticated, if request.auth does not equal null, and this includes registered and anonymous Firebase users. However, we are going to only allow people to write if that person is this specific user with this specific UID, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. Let's go ahead and move on to our products collection. And those have the same rules. We want anyone to be able to read it if they're authenticated, and only the admin user to write to it. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this and paste that right here. And we're just going to change the path. So we are going to instead match to the products collection and wildcard any product. And then we have the same read and write rules for the products as well. Now, a relatively new feature to security rules is that we have a simulator now and can test our rules right here. So if you just click right here where it says simulator, and that's going to pop up here, and it provides us with the simulation type. So we have get, create, update, and delete. And then we provide the path to the resource that we want to try and simulate. And this is really nice because we used to have to write the rules, deploy them, then go test in the client app and see if it worked or not. So here's what we can do to test this out. So first off, we're going to try a get, and we're not going to be authenticated. We're going to try and get or read a category. So I'm going to say /categories/ and then category. Okay, so we're going to be trying to get a category document. So I'm going to run this, and we should say simulator read denied. And that's good. That means that our security rules are working because we are not authenticated. But if I click this right here and say that we are authenticated and we try that again, we should now see green. So there we go. So simulated read allowed. That means that an authenticated user is allowed to read a category document. All right, so now let's try writing. So we'll say create, and we run this. And now, very good, we see that the simulated write was denied because we haven't specified in our simulation here which user it is, and so it is denying. But if we copy this UID, there's a place right here that we can specify the Firebase UID for this simulated user. So if we paste that there and we run this again, now we see that the simulated write is allowed. So that is very cool and very useful when you are writing your security rules. Great, so our products and categories are locked down. And now let's take a look at our users collection. So let's write our match statement. So I'm going to say match /users/user. And one thing is that you can use these wildcards in your rules as kind of like variables, okay? So let me publish this to save it. Oh, it's not gonna let me. I'm just gonna delete this for now, publish. And so right here, this category, for instance, if you used this in your security rules, this category, this would be these UIDs right here, okay? So whatever you set in, so whatever the document ID is, that's what you'll be able to use this to do comparisons on, okay? All right, so back to our users. I'm going to say match /users/user. And let's talk about who we want to be able to read and write to the users collection. All right, so anyone should be able to create an account, right? That makes sense because you download the app. You don't have any data that we can do verification against. You just click on create new user and you should be able to create a user. So anyone can create. However, you don't want just anyone to be able to update, read, or delete your user document, right? We want to make sure that the requester for a update, read, or delete is coming from that specific user. So we're going to compare the request auth's UID with the resource data ID. All right, so let's translate that into our Firestore rules. So I'm going to say allow create, and this is all we need here because anyone should be able to create. So we just say allow create. Now for reading and updating, deleting, we want to make sure that the request is coming from the correct user. So we say allow update, and then you can chain different operations here. So allow update, read, and delete if the request.auth.uid is equal to the resource.data.id. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're saying if the request.auth.uid is equal to resource.data.id. So what is this? Okay, so if we publish this, then I can show you here in our data, our users have this property right here, ID. Okay, and so we can do a check to make sure that those are the same. Therefore, ensuring that the person that is making the request to update, read, or delete the document is in fact the owner of that document. Very good. Finally, we have one more collection, and that is our favorites collection, which is a sub-collection of any given user. And so what we can do is we can actually nest match statements. So at this point, we're already in a specific user, okay? So we can go ahead and match to our favorites collection from right here. So I'm going to say match /favorites. Oh, gotta make sure you spell it right. Favorites / and then wildcard favorite. And we are going to allow reading and writing to this subcollection and its documents to anyone whose request.auth.uid is equal to the user variable that we have here. Okay, so we're going to say allow read and write if request.auth.uid is equal to user. Perfect. So let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit and then publish. And I'm going to go back to our simulator where we have this running, and I'm just going to go ahead and click through here, make sure that we still have access to our documents, and very good, it looks like it does. Perfect. So now our Firestore database is looking pretty good. But what about our storage where we're saving and storing our images? Well, turns out we need security rules for that too. So if we come up here to our storage and we go to our rules, the default rules for storage are a little better than for the database. The default rules here is that reading and writing is allowed if the request.auth does not equal null. So if the user is authed, they're able to read and write. So that's pretty good, but not quite as secure as we want because we only want the admin user to be able to write to it. All right. So if that sounds familiar, that's pretty much the same rules that we have for our database. So I'm just going to come back to our database and our rules, and I'm going to grab these two rules here for the categories and the products and come back to storage. and come over to our rules. And note the names here for category images and product images. And we come to rules, and you can see here that it's pretty similar. The only difference is instead of collections and documents, we're looking at file paths or folders, kind of like the OS operating system. You have a bunch of folders and directories. So what we can do is I'm just going to delete this one that is supplying this read-write rule for all paths, and we're going to replace that with these rules here. And we just need to swap out the path here. So instead of the categories collection, we are going to specify the category images folder and the product images folder. And I'm going to publish that. And let me just make sure that I got those names right. Category images and product images looks good. And then coming back to rules, let's do a quick simulation to make sure that that looks right. So let's try and get a category image. So I'm going to say category image, curly brace image, and say run. And that was denied as expected, but then let's be authenticated and try that out. And let's see here, category, oh, I have that wrong. It should be category images. There we go. Let's retry that, not being authenticated, and run it. There we go. So we should see should see it highlighted when it's working correctly. All right, so that is being denied as expected, but then let's authenticate and run that again, and now we are allowing. All right, let's try and do a create and run, and that should be denied until we supply our expected Firebase UID. We run that again, and now it should be allowed. Very good. All right, so that's great. Now we are done with securing both our database and our storage. Now note that I am not saying these rules are all you need to do to be completely secure, all right? There may be some holes that I have not thought of, so do not rely solely on these rules for launching a production e-commerce app, all right? We have just scratched the surface of everything you can do with security rules, so I highly recommend reading through the rest of the docs. You can just do a quick search for Firestore security rules. And going through these documents right here will really help cement these concepts. Alrighty, so we are getting very close to the end of this section. Just got some cleanup to do and we'll be finished. So I will see you in the next one.